Once upon a time, upon a Christmas Eve old, Tony Fauci sat busy in his home office. "A Merry Christmas, Uncle." It was the voice of Fauci's nephew.
"Ah, put a mask on, you little shit."
"Wear a mask at Christmas? Uncle, you don't mean that, I am sure."
"Oh, but I do. While you are doing your Merry Christmas routine, you are spewing droplets all over me and potentially exposing me, an elderly man with multiple comorbidities, to acute respiratory disease. If I had my will, every idiot who goes around with Merry Christmas on his unmasked, disease-riddled lips should be boiled in his own pudding and thrown off the internet."
"Uncle!"
"Nephew, you keep Christmas in your way and let me keep it in mine."
"Keep it? But you don't keep it."
"Let me leave it alone then. Much good it may do you. Much good has it ever done you. Just wear a good-fitting M95 mask, make sure you're vaxxed and boosted, and we won't have a problem."
"I have always thought of Christmas time as a good time, a kind, forgiving, charitable, pleasant time, and therefore, Uncle, though it has never put a scrap of gold or silver in my pocket, I believe that it has done me good and will do me good, and I say, God bless it."
Now, whatever you say, dickhead.
"I'll keep my Christmas humor to the last, so a Merry Christmas to you, Uncle."
All right, you can fuck off now. How many different ways do you want me to say it?
"And a Happy New Year."
Do I need to say it in sign language? What the hell is your malfunction?
His nephew left the word without an angry word, but the butler, in letting Fauci's nephew out, had let 2 other people in. "At this festive season of the year, Dr. Fauci, we should make some slight provision for people with acquired immunity, who suffer greatly at the present time since you threw thousands of them off their jobs because they wouldn't get your stupid vaccine. A few of us are endeavoring to raise a fund to buy these poor wretches some meat and drink and some means of warmth. What shall I put you down for?"
Nothing.
"Oh, you wish to be anonymous then?"
No, I wish to be left alone, assholes. Since you asked me what I wish, gentlemen, that is my answer. I don't make Merry Christmas at Christmas, and I can't afford to make people merry who don't believe in science. I support top-down, brute force, one-size-fits-all policy making, and people who don't listen to the warnings, they are not my problem.
"But many can't get the injection, and some would rather die."
If they would rather die, they had better get the hell on with it.
The hour of shutting up the home office soon arrived. Fauci took his melancholy dinner in his usual melancholy tavern and went home to bed. Now, it is a fact that there was nothing at all peculiar about the knocker on the door of this house, except that it was very large, and yet Fauci, having his key in the lock of the door, saw in the knocker not a knocker, but the face of Francis Collins. Collins' face with a dismal light about it like a bad lobster in a dark cellar. As Fauci looked at this, it was a knocker again. And he said, "Pooh-pooh!" and closed the door with a bang. The sound resounded through the house like thunder. Every room above and every bin full of Tony Fauci prayer candles in the storage closet below appeared to have a separate peal of echoes of its own. Fauci was not a man to be frightened by echoes. He fastened the door and walked across the hall and up the stairs. Up Fauci went, not caring a button for its being very dark. Darkness is cheap, and Fauci liked it. Quite satisfied, he closed his door and locked himself in, double locked himself in, which was not his normal custom. Thus secured against surprise, he put on his dressing gown and slippers and his nightcap and sat down before the television to eat a nice bowl of tapioca pudding. As he threw his head back in the chair, his glance happened upon a guitar, a disused guitar that hung in the room. It was with great astonishment and with a strange dread that, as he looked, he saw this guitar beginning to play. Soon it played loudly.
Somewhere past the pandemic, when we're free.
And so did every instrument in the house.
There's a life I remember, full of activity.
This was succeeded by a clanking noise deep down below, as if some person were dragging a heavy chain over the bins in the storage closet. Then he heard the noise much louder on the floors below, then coming up the stairs, then coming straight towards his door. It came on through the heavy door, and a specter passed into the room before his eyes, and upon its coming in, the dying flame leapt up as though it cried, "I know him! It's Francis Collins's ghost! What do you want with me?" "Much." "Who are you?" "Ask me who I was." "Well, who were you then?" "In life, I was your boss, Francis Collins, head of the NIH. The ghost sat down on the opposite side of the fireplace, as if he were quite used to it." "You don't believe me."
I don't.
"Why do you doubt your senses?"
Because I happen to know that Francis Collins is not dead. He sends me his dumb guitar videos every week, for Christ's sake. And here you are, whatever you are, claiming to be him. Humbug, I say. Then the spirit raised a frightful cry.
Somewhere past the pandemic, no quarantine.
Alright, fine. Just please, for the love of God, stop playing the fucking guitar. I will do anything you want. Just name it and then leave me the hell alone so I can eat my tapioca in peace.
It's required of every man, Tony, that the spirit within him should walk among his fellow men and travel far and wide, and if that spirit goes not forth in life, it is condemned to do so after death. I cannot rest, I cannot stay, I cannot linger anywhere. My spirit never walked beyond our office building. In life, my spirit never roved beyond our bureaucratic echo chamber, and weary journeys thus lie before me. Fauci was very much dismayed to hear the specter going on at this rate, and he began to quake exceedingly. I am here tonight to warn you that you will have a chance and hope of escaping my fate. You will be haunted by 3 spirits. Expect the first tomorrow night when the bell tolls 1. Expect the second on the next night at the same hour. The third upon the next night when the last stroke of 12 has ceased to vibrate. Then look to see me no more. Fauci tried to say humbug, but stopped at the first syllable, and being from the emotion he had undergone, or the fatigues of the day, or his glimpse of the invisible world, or the conversation of the ghost, or the lateness of the hour, he went straight to bed, without even cleaning his dentures, and fell asleep in an instant. Act 2, the first of the 3 spirits. When Fauci awoke, the church clock tolled a deep, dull, hollow, melancholy 1. Light flashed up in the room upon the instant, and the curtains of his bed were drawn aside by a strange figure, a woman, with a shrill, cackling laugh.
Are you the spirit, madam, whose coming was foretold to me?
I am!
Who and what are you?
I am the ghost of Christmas incompetence. As the words were spoken, they passed through the wall and stood in the busy thoroughfares of a city. It was made plain enough by the dressing of the buildings that here, too, it was Christmas time. The ghost stopped at a certain clinic door and asked Fauci if he knew it.
Know it? Of course I know it. I apprenticed here.
They went in. At sight of an old gentleman in a lab coat sitting behind such a high desk that if he had been 2 inches taller, he must have knocked his head against the ceiling, Fauci cried in great excitement.
Why, it's old Louis Del Vecchio! Bless his heart! It's my friend Louis Del Vecchio, alive again!
Hey, yo, Tony, how yous doing? A living and moving picture of Fauci's former self, a young man, came briskly in, accompanied by his fellow apprentice. Yo ho, my boys! No more work tonight. It's Christmas Eve. Tony, let's have the shutters up. Before a man can say 15 days to slow the spread. Clear away, my lads, and let's have lots of room here. Clear away! There was nothing they wouldn't have cleared away or couldn't have cleared away, with old Louis Del Vecchio looking on, and it was done in a minute. The warehouse was as snug and warm and dry and bright a ballroom as you would desire to see upon a winter's night. In came a DJ with a laptop, and went up to the lofty desk and made an orchestra of it and tuned like 50 stomach aches. In came Mrs. Louis Del Vecchio with one vast smile. In came the three Miss Louis Del Vecchios, beaming and lovable. In they all came, one after another, some shyly, some boldly, some gracefully, some awkwardly, some pushing, some pulling. In they all came anyhow and everyhow. Away they all went, 20 couple at once, hands half round and back again the other way, down the middle and up again, round and round, old top couple always turning in the wrong place. When the clock struck 11, this ball broke up. Mr. and Mrs. Louis Del Vecchio, shaking hands with every person as he or she went out, wished him or her a Merry Christmas. A small matter, said the ghost, to make these silly folks so full of gratitude. He has spent but a few $100 of your money, 3 or 4, perhaps. Is that so much that he deserves this praise?
Oh, it isn't that, Spirit. He has the power to render us happy or unhappy, to make our service a pleasure or a toil. Say that his power lies in words and looks, in things impossible to add up and count them up. What then? The happiness he gives is quite as great as if it cost a fortune. Spirit, remove me from this place. Haunt me no longer.
As he struggled with the spirit, he was conscious of being exhausted and overcome by an irresistible drowsiness, and further, of being in his own bedroom. He had barely time to reel to bed before he sank into a heavy sleep. Act 3, the second of the three spirits. Fauci awoke in his bedroom. The walls and ceiling were so hung with living green that it looked rather like the jungle room at Graceland, though leaves of holly, mistletoe, and ivy reflected back the light, and such a mighty blaze went roaring up the chimney. Heaped upon the floor, to form a kind of throne, were turkeys, chickens, big plates of ribs, great honkin' sausages, Big Macs, Slurpees, kegs of beer, hot tamales, cherry pies, buffalo wings, caramel popcorn, and big gigantic sacks of weed. Upon this couch there sat a decrepit old man who bore a glowing torch. Come on, man! Come in, and know me better, man. I am the ghost of Christmas corruption. Look upon me. Have you never before seen the like of me? Come sit on Grandpa's lap, and I'll give you a nickel. Fauci did as he was told, but he felt afterward like he ought to have held out for more than a nickel. The room and its contents all vanished instantly, and they stood in the city streets upon a snowy Christmas morning. Fauci and the ghost passed on, invisible, straight to Fauci's clerks, and on the threshold of the door the spirit smiled and stopped to bless the dwelling of Mr. Roberto Gonzalez with the sprinklings of his torch. Then up rose Mrs. Gonzalez. What has ever got your precious father then, and your brother, Tiny Tomas? No, there's father coming now, cried the two young Gonzalezes, who were everywhere at once. In came Roberto, the father, his threadbare clothes darned up and brushed to look seasonable, and Tiny Tomas upon his shoulder. Alas for Tiny Tomas, he bore a little crutch, and had his limbs supported by an iron frame. And how did little Tomas behave? As good as gold and better, my dear. Somehow he gets thoughtful sitting by himself so much, and he thinks the strangest things you have ever heard. He told me coming home that he wants to be a little girl instead of a little boy. So I think we need to arrange a meeting with that purple-haired guidance counselor. The two young Gonzaleses, they went to fetch the tamales, which they soon returned with in high procession. Mrs. Gonzalez made the hot sauce ready beforehand in a little saucepan, piping hot. Master Pedro pressed the tortillas with incredible vigor. Magdalena sweetened up the empanadas. Consuelo dusted the hot plates. Roberto took Tiny Tomas beside him into a tiny corner at a table. The two young Gonzaleses set chairs for everybody, not forgetting themselves, and crammed spoons into their mouths lest they should shriek for the tamales before their turn came to be helped. At last the dishes were set on, and grace it was said. It was succeeded by a breathless pause as Mrs. Gonzalez, looking slowly all along the carving knife, prepared to plunge it into the platter of delicious tamales. But when she did, and when the long-expected gush of stuffing issued forth, one murmur of delight arose all round the board, and even Tiny Tomas, excited by the two young Gonzaleses, beat on the table with the handle of his knife and feebly cried, "Hurrah!" But now, the plates being changed by Magdalena, Mrs. Gonzales left the room alone to take up the empanadas and to bring them in. Mrs. Gonzales entered, smiling proudly with the empanadas, so crispy and firm, blazing in half a quart of ignited tequila and with a sprig of Christmas holly stuck in the top. Oh, what a wonderful empanada. It's like a symphony in your mouth. This is the happiest I have been since Dr. Fauci fired me for refusing the COVID jab. At last the dinner was all done, the cloth was cleared, the hearth was swept, and the fire made up. Then all the Gonzales family drew round the hearth, while the chestnuts on the fire sputtered and crackled noisily. They were happy, grateful, pleased with one another, and contented with the time. And when they faded and looked happier yet in the bright sprinklings of the spirit's torch at parting, Fauci had his eye upon them, and especially on Tiny Tomas, until the last. But the whole scene passed off, and he and the spirit were again upon their travels. Much they saw, and far they went, and many homes they visited, but always with a happy end. Suddenly, as they stood together in an open place, the bell struck 12. Fauci looked about him for the ghost, but saw it no more. As the last stroke ceased to vibrate, he remembered the prediction of old Francis Collins, and lifting up his eyes, he beheld a solemn phantom, draped and hooded, coming like a mist along the ground towards him. Act 4, the last of the spirits. The ghost of Christmas accountability? I fear you more than any specter I have yet seen, and I can't help noticing you bear a troubling resemblance to Senator Rand Paul. But you do seem a lot less loquacious than him. Will you not speak to me? The ghost gave him no reply. The hand was pointed straight before them. Well, lead on, lead on. The night is waning fast. And it is precious time to me, I know, so lead on, spirit. They scarcely seemed to enter the city, for the city rather seemed to spring up about them. But there they were, in the heart of it, amongst the healthcare providers. The spirit stopped beside one little knot of public health bureaucrats. Observing that the hand was pointed to them, Fauci advanced to listen to their talk. I don't know much about it either way. I only know he's dead. Well, when did he die? Last night, I believe. But was he vaxxed and boosted? I haven't heard, really. I can't say. Perhaps he was. He didn't tell me. That's all I know. The scene had changed, and now he almost touched a bare, uncurtained bed. A pale light rising in the outer air fell straight upon this bed, and on it, unwatched, unwept, uncared for, was the body of this unknown man. Spirit? Let me see some tenderness connected with a death, or this dark chamber. Spirit will be forever present to me. The ghost conducted him to poor Roberto Gonzalez's house, the dwelling he had visited before, and found the mother and the children seated around the fire. Quiet. Very quiet. The noisy little Gonzalezes were as still as statues in one corner, and sat looking up at Pedro, who had a book before him. The mother and her daughters were engaged in needlework, but surely they were very quiet. The mother laid her work upon the table and put her hand up to her face. Oh, the color hurts my eyes. They're better now again. It makes them weak working by this candlelight. But that's all we have since the nice climate change people took away our electricity. And I wouldn't show weak eyes to your father when he comes home for the world. It must be near his time. Past it, rather. But I think he has walked a little slower than he used to these last few evenings, Mother. I have known him to walk with Tiny Tomas upon his shoulder, very fast indeed. But he was very light to carry, and his father loved him so that it was no trouble at all. And there is your father at the door. She hurried out to meet him, and Roberto came in. His Negra Modelo was ready for him, and they all tried who should help him to it the most. Then the two young Gonzaleses got upon his knees and laid each child a little cheek against his face, as if they said, "Don't mind it, Father. Don't be grieved. Soon they'll lift the vax mandate and you can go back to work." Roberto was very cheerful with them and spoke pleasantly to all the family. He looked at the work upon the table and praised Mrs. Gonzalez and the girls. Oh, you went today then, Roberto? Yes, my dear, I did. I wish you could have gone. It would have done you good to see how green a place it is. But you'll see it often. I promised him that I would walk there on a Sunday, my dear, dear little child.
Spectre, something informs me that our parting moment is at hand. I know it, but I know not how. Tell me what a man that was with the covered face whom we saw lying dead.
The ghost of Christmas accountability conveyed him to a dismal, wretched, ruinous churchyard. The spirit stood amongst the graves and pointed down to one. Fauci crept toward it, trembling as he went, and following the finger read upon the stone of the neglected grave his own name, Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Am I that man who lay upon the bed? No, spirit, this can't be right. I am not the man I was. I will not be that man again. Why show me this if I am past all hope? Assure me that I yet may change these shadows you have shown me by an altered life. I will honor Christmas in my heart, and I will try to keep it all the year. I will lift all the vax mandates. I will never again make anybody wear a stupid obedience muzzle on their face. Oh, Spirit, tell me I may sponge away the writing on this stone.
Holding up his hands in one last prayer to have his fate reversed, he saw an alteration in the phantom's hood and dress. It shrunk, collapsed, and dwindled down into a bedpost. Yes, and the bedpost was his own. The bed was his own. The room was his own. Best and happiest of all, the time before him was his own to make amends in. He checked his smartphone and the alert sounds were the sweetest thing to ever fill his ears. Running to the window, he opened it and put out his head. No fog, no mist, no night. Clear, bright, stirring, golden day.
What is today?
Cried Fauci, calling downward to a boy in Sunday clothes.
Huh? I say, what day is it today, my fine fellow?
Well, today? Why, it's Christmas Day.
It's Christmas Day, I haven't missed it. Hello, my fine fellow. I say, do you know that tamale shop in the next street but one over on the corner?
Well, yes, sir, I should hope I do.
Ah, an intelligent boy, a remarkable boy. Do you know whether they've sold that mega tamale platter in the front window? Not the little platter, but the big son of a bitch.
What, the one that's as big as me, you mean?
Yeah, what a delightful boy. It's a pleasure to talk to him. Yes, my dear boy, that is the one I mean.
Well, it's still sitting there now, I believe, sir.
It is? Go run along and buy it. No, I am not in earnest. Go and buy it and tell them to bring it here that I may give them the direction on whence to convey it. Come back with the man and I'll give you $20. Come back with him in less than 5 minutes and I will give you $50.
The boy was off like a shot.
I'll send it to Roberto Gonzalez's. He shan't know who sends it. It's twice the size of Tiny Tomas.
Fauci dressed himself all in his best and at last got out into the streets. The people were by this time pouring forth as he had seen them with the ghost of Christmas corruption. And walking with his hands behind him, Fauci regarded everyone with a delightful smile. He looked so irresistibly pleasant, in a word, that 3 or 4 good-humored vagrants said, "Good morning, sir. A Merry Christmas to you." He was early at the office next morning. If he could only be there first and catch Roberto Gonzalez walking by. The clock struck 9, but there was no Roberto. 1:15, no Roberto. Roberto was fully 18 minutes and a half behind his normal time. Roberto's hat was off as Fauci bid him to enter.
Roberto, I am pleased to say I've had a change of heart, and I've decided to lift the vax mandate, and you can have your job back. I no longer hate you for being a filthy, disobedient scofflaw who refuses to follow expert medical advice.
Well, that's a delightful bit of news, sir. Thank you very much indeed.
So you're grateful, huh? Yeah, I think you are. Step this way, if you please. Now, I tell you what, my friend, I am not going to stand for this sort of thing any longer, and therefore, I am about to raise your salary.
Roberto trembled.
Feliz Navidad, Roberto, said Fauci as he clapped him on the back. A Felicia Navidad, my good fellow, than I have given you for many a year. I shall give you your job back, I shall raise your salary, and I will endeavor to assist your struggling family. But Fauci was better than his word. He did it all, and infinitely more, and to Tiny Tomas, who did not die, he was like a favorite uncle, a T.O. Tony, if you will. He became as good a friend, as good a public health bureaucrat, and as good a man as was known in the city of Washington, which could be considered damning a man with faint praise, so I guess let's just move on. Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, but they couldn't tell they were laughing because they all had stupid masks on. But his own heart laughed, and that was quite enough for him, and it was always said of him forever after that he's a fairly nice guy, but he will murder you in a heartbeat if you're standing between him and a live television camera. May that be truly said of us and all of us, and so, as Tiny Tomas observed, God bless us, everyone.